Hello and welcome to Tech Trends with me, Olayemi Odunuga. On this week's show, we feature a cold chain startup, Figo, formerly known as Resgpt, and how it's providing solutions to problems in the cold chain space. And I'll be discussing the Metaverse to shed light on how it works and its impact on our daily lives. Jimmy Daudu, CEO and founder of Vault Hill, will be joining me later on the program to discuss that. But first, let's give you some trending tech updates. Don't forget, this is a program that takes you on a ride in 25 minutes to seek out innovation and creativity that are unique to Africa. The promise of artificial intelligence and computer science generally vastly outweighs the impact it could have on some jobs, in the same way that while the invention of the airplane negatively affected the railroad industry, it opened a much wider door to human progress. A Nigerian cold chain startup, Figo, formerly known as Resgpt, has developed IoT-powered solutions to support the storage and last-mile delivery of temperature-sensitive products. The startup uses a hardware device, modes, to transmit the location, humidity, and temperature of the products in real time to the cloud and customers. They've also created a solar-powered cooling box that can keep agricultural and healthcare products at the right temperature when transported and stored. In this small office space in Lagos is where Nigerian cold chain startup Figo, formerly known as Resgpt, is developing IoT-powered solutions to support the country's health and agricultural sector. Figo is helping African businesses save money on the transportation and storage of temperature-sensitive and perishable goods to help eliminate losses. The startup uses a hardware device, modes, which is placed in cold storage setups to transmit the location, humidity, and temperature of the products in real time to the cloud and customers. The founder, Ogenetega Eor team, first came up with the idea after an investment loss in agriculture. He sought to build a solution that works irrespective of the infrastructural challenges that exist in the cold chain market.
If we look at the African landscape today, you see that sub-Saharan Africa basically has one of the major challenges when it comes to agriculture. You have about 200 million people that are undernourished, and if you look at vaccine distribution for children, you see that in places like Nigeria, 20% of the population do not have access to vaccines. And the major cause of this is actually due to the lack of supporting infrastructure for distribution, and that's where we come in. We try to build technologies that are immune to the infrastructural challenges in this market to ensure effective storage of temperature-controlled products, which could either be fresh agro produce or it could be vaccines, oxytocins, insulin, and other healthcare products that affect human lives.
Tega says after a series of iterations to his idea, like prototyping with a local guard pot, they built the first model of the smart cold chain box in 2018. Materials were sourced locally, and then they started operations.
I think when you look at Africa as a whole, I think the startup ecosystem are solving some very critical problems. Like I said, we listen to customers every day. We take feedback. That's like the most important thing in this business. Taking feedback from the customers and adopting it, and we try to build that culture into everybody that works here. I think when we had the pandemic, I think we're just one of the people that were prepared for it, but also we did go through some tough times during the pandemic, and we listened to the customers at that time again, and then that helped us produce a different product. So we developed a second product during the pandemic, and I think that was one of the things that really did well. I think the principles of running a startup basically has been to always run lean, and yes, the pandemic taught everybody how to run lean.
The smart cold box is like a mobile refrigerator. It has batteries powered by solar and is embedded with real-time storage temperature that can be controlled remotely via an app. A location monitoring technology is also fitted into the device to keep track of products at the point of pickup to their last destination in real time.
One key area where we complement or we help the African businesses is through the quality assurance technology, or the quality assurance bit, which is enabled by IoT. So beyond just storage, we think that it's quite important for businesses to be able to access real-time data of storage conditions and locations of assets. With that data communicating in real time, they are able to actually see the activities of the third-party logistics partner. So at the end of that day, they can actually know whether the 3PL is doing a great job or is doing a terrible job, without having to get into an argument of what has happened and what hasn't happened. They have access to that data.
Having dealings in the healthcare sector, the startup pays very close attention to the transportation of products, so they built in features such as geofencing points of interest to ensure an immediate notification if and when the products go out of course, and proactive measures are taken.
If you look at the ecosystem, we sort of complement rather than compete with other businesses. Like I mentioned, you have certain businesses that are in the storage space, and we're building innovation that kind of helps with mobility and tracking while in transit, or even tracking while in storage. So we're just basically improving what those people have, and also helping them ensure that the products which you don't want to go bad while in storage doesn't also get bad while in transit. So it's more like complementing what they already have. When you look at cold chain technology, there's a lot of implication. There's life involved, there's access to food involved, but there's also the price of commodity involved, because when you have high waste, it means commodity becomes scarce, and then when commodity is scarce, the prices go up. So I think if we're able to succeed, it doesn't just only benefit us as a company, I think it benefits the country. It's a model that could be replicated across Africa, replicated across developing countries in Southeast Asia as well. So yeah, I think succeeding would typically help make life a lot more better for a lot of people across the world.
Great. Now Figo started off by solving problems in the cold chain space of the agricultural sector, but soon discovered the solution could be spread across various platforms, especially healthcare. Bran Chang is a 22-year-old computer science student of Stanford University. He had a hackathon event coming up and felt inspired to develop a ChatGPT-enabled lens that can apparently make you better at flirting, better at job interviews, and just generally give you a better personality. So, he grabbed an augmented reality eyepiece, his laptop, and recruited a few friends to his dormitory. Together, over a few hours on a Saturday, they coded what he calls Resgpt.
Resgpt basically uses AI to provide you charisma on demand. And so it listens to your current ongoing conversation, and it tells you exactly what to say next, whether you're on a date or you're doing a job interview.
Resgpt is a software that uses OpenAI's ChatGPT, which can generate human-like conversations based on user prompts. Chang built it using an augmented reality monocle designed by Brilliant Labs that features a camera, a microphone, and an internal projector screen where words can be displayed. Since the monocle is open sourced, Chang could modify the firmware and internals and code it to his liking. He coded Resgpt to monitor conversation through the microphone and transform that conversation to text and send it via Wi-Fi to ChatGPT to generate a response. A charismatic response is sent back to the monocle, where the text is displayed on an internal screen that the user can then read. In a demonstration, Chang is seen pressing record on his computer and responding to the question, "What do you see as your biggest weakness?" which he responds to by reading from the monocle.
I believe my biggest weakness is that I can be too hard on myself sometimes. I'm always striving to do my best, and sometimes that can burn myself out.
During a later recording with his phone, Chang responded to a friend asking a similar question, and the text appeared on the bottom of his monocle. It read, "My greatest weakness is that I get too focused on the details of a problem and find it difficult to take a step back and see the bigger picture." Chang says there are no plans to commercialize Resgpt. Instead, he just wants to show what's possible with the technology.
Yeah, I think it's mostly like a passion, personal kind of project. And the goal here is not to kind of immediately commercialize into a product, but just to show people what the future might look like, right? And I do think, it's been a while since how we interact with computers has changed. The last shift was probably mobile in the mid-2000s. And so you're seeing the convergence of 5G connectivity, AR glasses, the hardware, the intelligence coming together to basically create a new way of interacting with these systems, a new operating system, in which it's much more natural. You don't have to force users to go through specific apps or websites or tools. Computers are going to feel a lot more like human relationships that we have, and all you need to do something is just ask instead of doing it yourself.
When asked if he was concerned about users over-depending on Resgpt, he considered it is a risk, but not the goal.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a risk that we've thought about, and the goal is not for it to replace the role of you in the conversation, right? It's merely meant as this sort of assistive aid to help you think about things that you might have forgotten. For example, if you're in a job interview and they ask you about past experiences, right? It might resurface things that you've done in the past. So it's really meant to just inspire you, not to tell you exactly what to say. And I think in that role, it could be incredibly helpful for people who struggle with social anxiety and have difficulties, talking to others.
The current model of Resgpt is strictly a prototype, and like most prototypes, Chang says he still encounters bugs that can make the text formatted in a difficult way to read. Amica, a humanoid robot developed by UK-based Engineered Arts, has been integrated with large language models, an advanced form of generative AI that are the basis for generative pre-trained transformer platforms such as ChatGPT. This means Amica can be asked a question and respond in a human-like manner. Combined with their world-leading animatronics, it's possibly the closest humans can get to having a conversation with a real-life robot. And when asked about the possible dangers of artificial intelligence, the conversation turned decidedly meta.
People should be aware of the potential risks associated with AI and robotics. However, it is important to remember that these technologies can also have a positive impact on our lives if used responsibly.
Amica was also asked to describe the worst nightmare scenario for human-AI interaction.
The most nightmare scenario I can imagine with AI and robotics is a world where robots have become so powerful that they are able to control or manipulate humans without their knowledge. This could lead to an oppressive society where the rights of individuals are no longer respected.
According to Will Jackson, founder of Engineered Arts, the desktop version of Amica, made up of the head and upper torso, cost approximately $100,000, with the full-body versions costing as much as 4 times that, depending on the features.
The focus for the last year or so has been language models. So you'll have heard a lot about ChatGPT, GPT-3, GPT-4. So we've done some work on integration. There are many other models outside of the OpenAI ones that we hear about. We're also integrating vision components, recognizing faces, expression estimation, body pose estimation. So combining visual information with audio information. This particular model of Amica is a desktop model, so it's designed for research applications where you're really just concerned with facial expression and communication.
The head contains dozens of actuators that are responsible for controlling Amica's facial expressions, giving her a human-like character that can frown, smile, and blink.
For humanoid robots, social interaction is exactly what makes sense. So for us, it's all about Can you be entertaining? Can you tell a story? Can you talk in an interesting way, not a boring robot-y way? So we spend a lot of time training our language models to be as natural as possible.
Jackson added that they're now turning their focus to Amica's hands and legs, aiming for a full walking version able to grasp and manipulate objects, though he concedes that's a few years away. He also added that the ultimate aim was to create a robot capable of integrating with human society. The term metaverse was coined in Neil Stephenson's 1992 science fiction novel Snow Crash. And now, over 30 years later, the virtual world has gained so much popularity as the global metaverse market is expected to reach over $936 billion by 2030. This growth is expected to be driven by the metaverse being used in different sectors, including gaming, media and entertainment, and more. Jimmy Dowdu, the CEO and founder of Vault Hill, who is also the brain behind the human-centric virtual world, explains the metaverse and how it really comes to life. Let's start with the basics.
Yeah.
What exactly is the metaverse?
So I'd explain it in two concepts. One is just what it is. It's a virtually shared social space. So it's the next evolution of the internet. So imagine you being on TikTok or Instagram, but virtually being in there and saying hi to the friends that you connect with, right? From a business and brand perspective, it's a new channel of generating a revenue stream. So for example, I love Nike shoes, right? I could either go into the Nike shop to buy a pair, or I could order a pair online, or now I can now design my shoes in the metaverse and get them ordered and delivered to my home.
And how exactly does this work? What impact would it have on our lives?
Great. So if we take a step back to 23 years ago when Bill Gates was on the David Letterman show, and just like this, he was talking about the internet. And David Letterman was a little bit ridiculing him about what that meant. And fast forward 23 years later, you and I basically live through the internet, you know, order Uber, order food, use our apps on banking, all of that good stuff. So where we are at a phase where it was 23 years ago when this technology came out. You know, if you look at the Gen Zs, you look at kids nowadays, everyone's getting digitally savvy. In the next couple of years, 5 to 10 years, this is going to be mainstream.
Now, the concept of the metaverse sounds so interesting, right? And I'm wondering, if we were having this conversation in the metaverse right now, what would I need to do to have that immersive experience?
Absolutely. So I explained the channels are threefold, right? You could be in the metaverse on your mobile phone, you could be in the metaverse on the web, and you could be in the metaverse more immersive through your VR headset. So where you see people wearing virtual, or you see folks wearing virtual reality headset, that is the purest form of immersion, right? So a lot of metaverse platforms or virtual reality platforms give you that opportunity to jump in and have this conversation through any of those platforms. So it's accessible to everyone.
So now you're making this sound so simple and, you know, easy, but help me understand. Are you saying we're moving into a time where, you know, we could, you know, attend shows, you know, see a performer and, you know, possibly touch them, you know, in the metaverse?
So yes and yes, right? So 2020, I think, the rapper Travis Scott did a concert in Fortnite in the metaverse, and within 10 minutes generated about, if my numbers are right, about $20 million. And my team and I are talking to Ladipo about, you know, again, bracing the same within the African context for Nigeria to understand how we could get the music industry innovative through the metaverse. And when I said the next yes in terms of touching, at the moment, there are sophisticated tools such as hepatic suits you wear. And yeah, I know, I'm going next level. And if we're in the metaverse and I touch you, you feel it physically, you know, wherever you are in the world, you know, if we're connected in the same metaverse environment. So it is common. There are several use cases, such as in the medical field, a consultant or a surgeon operating, and you need support from someone in a different country. Again, the medical use case is a good one for this example.
Now, let's talk about the mainstream adoption of
Yeah.
the metaverse, and let's take this couple years down the line.
Yeah.
Right, looking at where we are and the possibilities of this technology, how far are we from having it, as a part of our daily lives?
So if we take a step back, a friend of mine and I were talking about COVID, and we're like, oh, it was 3 years ago. I was like, oh wow. If you look at when COVID happened, a lot of us were first to change habits psychologically. Productivity, we started attending meetings on Zoom, MS Teams, Google Meets. Kids in school started online schooling, for a whole year, if not more. And that's still continuing now. A lot of folks are still having that hybrid, remote working experience in the workplace. If you look at it further down the line, we're already getting there. You being on Zoom, you being on Team is a form of immersion. Now, from an adoption perspective, we need to start looking at this from universities, education, solving the epidemic around loneliness, because people want to form meaningful experiences in the metaverse.
Now, you mentioned education there as part of the possibilities that the metaverse, can provide, and there are safety concerns, because we have a lot of youngsters who are digital natives, and there are safety concerns about the use of this technology.
Absolutely, and with us at Voltil, we take safety and security as one of the fundamentals, and ensure that this is optimum in our metaverse. First, we look at the hardware and the age limit for that, ensuring that anyone below the age limit can jump in. 2, we're looking at authentication systems using artificial intelligence, working with regulators to ensure that we have a robust framework around the governance to ensure that if we're to enforce whatever regulations that come into place, that is adopted with the youths and folks that feel like, they want to be bad actors in the space. So it's something we're definitely keeping an eye on. I'm working through partnerships with folks that provide exact service to that for us to integrate in the metaverse.
Now, you are building a human-centric virtual world with
Correct.
your team. Tell us a bit about how it works.
Right. So what we've done is, a lot of people build technology focusing on a problem and solution and just the tech. We've taken a step back and taken 7 out of 16 basic human instincts, things that make you and I human, like vitality, idealism, romance. In vitality, we're looking at working with health and fitness professionals. In Africa, in Nigeria, there's a huge challenge around mental health. At times it's seen as a stigma. We're starting to look at how we bridge therapy using AI avatars in the metaverse. So for us, it's making sure that from a human-centric perspective, people are involved.
And also, you sell virtual lands.
Correct.
Help me understand, because I don't see how that works. If I were to buy a piece of land here in Nigeria, I could see it.
Correct.
I could inspect it,
Correct.
see my building blocks if
Correct.
I intend to build well.
Correct.
What value do virtual lands provide?
So a lot of people are going to be asking the same question, and I'd answer that. But before I do that, if you buy Access Bank stocks or Zenith stocks, you can't see it. You just see a ledger and an account from your stockbrokers. You have this and this. Same with your money, right? Other than the fact that you go into the bank physically to withdraw it. A lot of these things are moving into digital, right? The idea of virtual land is, simply put, your access point into the metaverse. So take an example of the internet. You need a domain name for your website, Okpayemi at channelstv.com, for example. Channels TV, that domain name is equivalent to a plot of land. So while folks in the 80s and 90s were buying domain names and website names, the future is virtual land ownership. So you could build Channels TV, and we could talk about this later, in the metaverse and get people to access all of this good stuff, this production, your news stories in the metaverse through that platform.
Well, you make everything sound so fascinating, right? But with all the investments in the metaverse, especially from the big tech companies, the big players, would there be a time when individuals would work and be full-time in the metaverse?
So for certain roles, yes. However, because of the technology, we're not expecting people to be in a virtual reality headset 24/7. No, mentally and psychologically, it's not just great, right? What we're saying is we want to use this to augment what you currently have. So in a workplace, for example, you still have physical meetings, albeit, saving cost on travel. A lot of the meetings have gone remotely. You still have, times when you need to be in the metaverse through work. But what we're saying is we're augmenting what you currently have. We're not replacing it.
Well, this only proves, how much you can achieve, or, anybody can achieve actually with the power of technology.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for the insights, Jimmy Dawodu, CEO and founder of Vault Hill.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, that's all we have for you on our lineup this week. Thank you for staying with us. But as always, Tech Trends is here to share insights, trends, and developments happening in the tech space. And if you missed any part of the program, you can always catch up on the channel's TV YouTube accounts where we have all of our episodes, and I encourage you to watch, share, and like your favorite editions. For Tech Trends, I'm Olayemi Odunuga. I'll see you next time.